And we're live! Welcome to the Bard Book Club discussion of Antony and Cleopatra by one William Shakespeare.
With special guest actress Marcia Leticia Ruiz Olgan, who played Cleopatra in our production that we did.
Yes.
So Bridget,
Welcome, Mar.
Bridget, you want to start us off? What do you think of the play?
I thought it was interesting. We kind of talked about this on our own, but we talked about how, it combines a lot of his different themes of his plays, which I thought was really cool because there are, a lot of comedic moments to it. And there's also those moments that are, very, dramatic and, everything and, everyone is dying and everything. And then it's also a history based on, real events. So I feel like that combination was something that isn't typically seen in his plays, since they're usually in boxes. Yeah. So it had everything, even though it was just considered a history. So I thought that was pretty cool.
I think it's just considered a drama. I think only the Henry and Richard are considered histories because they were his history of England. Because technically Caesar, Macbeth, and King Lear are real things. I did some research. This was first performed by the King's Men at the Globe in 1607.
And the first folio was published in 1623.
And the principal source material is an English translation of Plutarch's The Life of Mark Antony from the lives of the noble Grecians and Romans compiled together that was translated by Sir Thomas North. And many critics believe Virgil's first century poem, can you pronounce it?
The Aeneid?
The Aeneid had a lot of influence over the play.
Next.
I really like it. I think it's I would argue it's one of the absolute most underrated Shakespeare plays. Because
I agree. I feel like people should talk about it more for considering I thought this was pretty good and it's pretty easy to get into and everything.
It's very easy to understand. I think it's very funny. It's honestly pretty much the only Shakespeare play that has a main woman like this. Because even though it's Antony and Cleopatra, he's nowhere near as much the main character as Cleopatra. I also read that a lot of critics said that this play helped dismantle the idea of seeing Cleopatra as a manipulative seductress, because that was something big in history at the time, as they were she beguiled and bewitched all these men, and the people hated her. And it's not what this play does. So, Mar, you played Cleopatra, and you were telling me that you really liked the play. What are your general thoughts on the play?
Yeah, I think it's a very well-balanced play. Also, it didn't have a lot of boring moments or a lot of dialogue in just one character. It was pretty quick to read, and just to have a dynamic with all of us. I had never read it. This was my first time. While we were doing the whole production, and I really liked it. I think it's now my favorite Shakespeare play because I hadn't found one, I could say Macbeth or stuff like that, but this one is really calling out to me. And I enjoy just seeing Cleopatra just as a person or whatever with flaws or with even bravery and stuff like that is just not the object of love or stuff like that. So I really appreciated that.
I also like that it doesn't do the thing where it glorifies her either way. It's not she was this completely innocent person who did.
It shows her as a real person.
Yeah, she was definitely still fucked up, and the way she acted wasn't always best, but she wasn't this evil, horrific ruler. And I thought it was interesting that whenever he does plays about rulers like Caesar or the Henrys or Macbeth or King Lear, it always deals with their downfall as a political leader. And her downfall was because of politics, but the play's focusing more on the emotional aspect of how she decided as a queen, I'm going to go out on my own terms, not be captured by Caesar. I learned that.
Well, also I feel there is a lot of emotion tied into the other play. I mean, I disagree. I agree, but tied in with the other, but with Henry V, how he could be seen as both a good leader and a bad leader by people, and how he tries to connect to them. And then with Macbeth, how he, just kind of his mindset, I feel is what Macbeth is all about. How he doesn't care for the power, he doesn't think it's real, and then once he gets this idea in his head, then it all kind of crumbles away with his mind going kind of crazy.
I think what I mean is like her emotions, like she's a very emotional person, had nothing to do with how she worked as a political leader.
Yeah.
Because she would be very emotional in one scene about Antony, but then when it was time to like be political, she could immediately switch because all the scenes about politics, she's very level-headed, you know, the idea of like, oh, woman ruler, whereas like, and she didn't seem pompous. Like Caesar's pompous, King Lear eventually like gets taken down a notch, but he starts out really pompous. Macbeth, like you said, is like, oh, the power is meaningless, and then once he gets it, it like corrupts him,
and he just wants more and more.
Yeah, and a lot of the men, like their emotions play such a big role in how they work as a political leader, and Cleopatra separates how she feels emotionally from how she acts politically.
Yeah. And I feel like that's an indication that like she is a good ruler in one sense, because it's like she can separate those things and she knows how to rule her country.
And I think it's interesting that Shakespeare, who, you know, it's not that he doesn't write a lot of women characters, because arguably like it's understandable since he didn't have women actors back then, but that, you know, when he writes these like emotional male rulers who have these great downfalls because of how like emotionally tumultuous they get in their politics, that when he writes his only play with a female ruler, it's the complete opposite of that. And I think it's interesting that, you know, he wrote all the Tudor, like Henry Tudor plays. He could have written about Mary Queen of Scots, or he could have written about Anne Boleyn, or he could have written about like all these other like English queens, and that he chose to do Cleopatra is, I think, very interesting. Like, I wonder why that's what he chose, because also just the setting of Egypt, you know, like a not white setting is like Cleopatra was probably white. Like they're not 100% sure of what her race was, because she wasn't like she was born in Egypt, but her lineage was not Egyptian. She was Macedonian, I think. Is that what I wrote down? Who knows? And so I think it's interesting. Yeah, she was not Egyptian. She was born in Egypt, but she traced her family origins to Macedonia, Greece, and Ptolemy the First Soter was she was like descended from Alexander the Great, basically. So she was most likely white, but Egypt is obviously a POC setting. And, you know, when he does the like less historically accurate rulers like Caesar and Macbeth, they're still in like white places. And so what do you think? Like, you guys, why do you think he picked Cleopatra? Because I've been trying to figure that out this whole time. Why, for like the one woman ruler he was going to write a play about, he was like, you know what? The woman who fucked both her brothers. I think that's who we're going to do. Thankfully, the play cuts that out. The play's like, let's not address that.
I think it's just like the exotication of Egypt and all of that. Like, maybe he saw it as well as something that could be interesting or like captivating for the audiences as well. Yeah, I don't know if it was also like, in a way, if he got to write about a woman that was a ruler, how he could like save himself from writing about Elizabeth, right?
Yeah. I think there's also, because like just at the end of the day, so little is like 100% known about Cleopatra, that there's almost like this mythical element to her. So whenever people are like, this play is not historically accurate, it's like no one for sure knows what was historically accurate back then, because they're going off next to nothing. Like Bridget and I watched the documentary.
We'll talk about it later, but for the movie, it was like, and then this very specific thing happened, and we were like,
they were like, oh, there was so much passion in the air that night, and Cleopatra and Antony were feeling this for each other. I'm like, did you talk to them?
Like, how do you know?
But then other things, they were like, who knows if this happened? I'm like, you don't know if any of it happened. This is ancient Egypt. Like, so yeah, I think
I feel like they were very certain.
It's interesting because there's something like Macbeth. We learned that I didn't know for the longest time that Macbeth was a real king, but like the story he writes the play of is based on a myth. So like about the king, an urban legend that got started after Macbeth was the king. That's like pretty much not accurate. Like there's all this evidence that it's not. And the way that he wrote Julius Caesar is not accurate. And there's all this, I mean, just the fact that Caesar, they're like, oh, Caesar didn't want to be king. When we learned through the documentary that Caesar was like, his campaign was dictator for life. So yeah. I wonder if, I mean, because based on what little we hear about her, this doesn't seem wholly that different. Obviously, he had to write a lot of speculation because it's just conversations that they're having in private. So it's like when people are like, oh, it's not accurate.
I'm like, don't know what happened back then. Yeah.
How would you know what the fuck she said to her friends when she was alone in her room? Like, how would we have known that to begin with? Any historical fiction is going to be inaccurate because you don't know. Like, nobody was doing, like, a documentary about her back then, being like, let's make sure we account everything. Like, I learned that the thing with the asp may or may not be how she killed herself. Like, but again, let's choose to believe it is, because what a baller way to go.
Yeah.
Who are you guys' favorite characters?
Cleopatra. I think Cleopatra and Charmaine.
I love Charmaine. Yeah. Yeah. I couldn't stand Antony.
I think Cleopatra was just the most like fleshed out one, and also just like kind of had the most like interesting perspective to look at, you know?
She's just like larger than life. I definitely got queer vibes from her and Charmaine because like, especially like when they were all dying, she like had the other women die first, and then she died before Charmaine, and it gave me the same vibes as like Hamlet dies before Horatio. So like, you know, Cleopatra dies in Charmaine's arms. And the idea of like when Charmaine says like, your crown's awry, here I'll mend it. Like the idea of like, I'll make sure you die a queen. I also just, again, since so many Shakespearean women die by suicide, like Lady Macbeth dies by ambiguous suicide, and I think it's Portia in Caesar who like swallows hot coals or something. I forget which one in Caesar. One of the wives does that. Juliet obviously kills herself. Ophelia drowns herself. So like, yes, Cleopatra kills herself, but she wasn't. It's like, yes, she was killing herself over a man, kind of. I feel like if Caesar wasn't coming to like take over everything and essentially like imprison her, she wouldn't have done it. But it was like her kingdom was falling, and it was pretty common back then for women in like political places, even if like you weren't the ruler, just like a woman close to the crown, like there was probably a big chance you're going to be like abducted and raped. And so that was probably going to happen since Caesar was like, you're going to be mine. So the idea of like, well, Antony's already dead too. So like, and it's the idea that all her women killed themselves too. Like, I think they, to me, were killing themselves because Caesar was coming, not because Antony had died. Because if it was because of Antony, it wouldn't have been this big ordained thing. Like, come, let's commit suicide. Like,
I agree.
Orchestrated activity. Like, gather round, time to die. Like,
come on, guys,
bring it together. Time, sleep over. Time to go.
It's like that that video that you kept referencing by that other booktuber.
Oh yeah, she was like, come along, let's do the show. Yeah, it's like, it's very much like, I mean, I think that also then shows like the idea that Cleopatra is a good ruler, that all her women were like, yeah, we'll go out too. Like they weren't ready to like, they weren't going to like betray her to Caesar. Like nobody betrayed her to Caesar. He just had more armies. Which I thought, so. And I also think it's telling that she dies by a snake, because like Adam and Eve, obviously, the snake, and the idea that like, oh, a woman sought too much power. And then I looked this up because I thought it was interesting, is Charmaine says in the beginning when they're like joking around with the fortune teller, and he says, you outlive the lady that you serve. And like, obviously Charmaine thinks like that guy's full of shit. And she says, oh, excellent. I love long life better than figs. And then when they sneak the snakes in, they sneak them in a basket of figs. And I looked up what figs represent, and they represent the idea of two people belonging to one another. and they also resemble two people who share creative, twin creative energies and desires. So obviously you can argue that that's Antony and Cleopatra, but I also think the fact that Charmaine was the one to say, I love long life as better than figs, and then she outlives Cleopatra just to like hold her while she dies. I've been connecting the dots. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk.
Yeah, I agree that she made it like out of like defiance and also to protect herself and her maidens from the horrors that they will have to endure under Caesar's power. Yeah, I don't think I've ever seen anyone argue that it's because of Antony, though. Like, just
I'm sure people do. Like, I'm sure those people exist because, like, the other women, like Ophelia kills herself because of Hamlet, and Juliet kills herself because of Romeo, and and Portia kills herself because of Brutus or Caesar or whoever. I think both the wives and Julius Caesar killed themselves. I think they both.
I think so.
They're both like, I'm out. Lady Macbeth, like, yeah, it's because her husband's like not taking care of her while she's having like a psychotic break about murdering someone.
Yeah,
I think it's interesting that like she's the most powerful lead female character, and she healed herself for political reasons.
Mm-hmm.
I would like to see like a male character like kill themselves for once. Like,
that'd be nice.
they all just keep dying. I mean, Antony.
Just in the sense that, like, you know, the equality there.
I mean,
Antony and Romeo killed themselves, so yeah. Was Shakespeare okay? Because he really like relied on suicide a lot. As like, he was like, "What should they do next? Suicide. That's the way to do it." Like
the best.
It's like if he was planning out his plays, and he was like, "Okay, so then there's gonna be a romance, and then, you know, what should I do with them?
How can I wrap?
When they die."
It always ends in war, suicide, or a wedding. Those are the three options.
Yeah.
Sometimes all of them. You just
throw them all together.
So what everybody think of the plot? Like, we already touched on a little that like it's a much more character driven story. Like, they barely even introduce the politics till like halfway through the play. Like, the beginning is still just like Cleopatra and Antony like arguing, and like Cleopatra, like, I've always thought like the scene with the messenger is really funny.
Oh, that's the funniest part. Yeah.
Like, have you seen her? Is she prettier than me? Like,
I love that she loses it and like just starts hitting the messenger and takes out a dagger.
It's so funny.
And then he's like, I mean, the whole like, don't shoot the messenger. I wonder if that's where the term like came from. The idea that
could be
that she's so. Let me look it up. Where did the term "don't shoot"? Well, and Mar, like you talked about, like it's not boring or anything.
It's interesting with the conflict.
Like, just in comparison to other plays that we've read, like this one, like just because it just flowed so nicely and it had a lot of dialogue and all of that, and it didn't have like these characters just proclaiming like Hamlet, you know, and like
there weren't like, if there were monologues, they served a purpose, and like even though there were 40 characters, which is too much. I agree. It never felt like ridiculous. Like every time people were on stage, it made sense. Like you could follow what was going on, and that's just like in the Henrys, you cannot follow for the love of God who is talking to who. Like,
yeah, and like we stayed with the characters, right? Like we didn't just go with these random sailors or these random other people just having on the side some conversation or other. Like, I remember one of the plays, it was just like these people, like, I don't know, on the beach talking. I mean, like, oh yeah, we're on this journey, and it's like, okay, but who cares? You're not part of the plot.
Yeah,
like,
there was always like the constant of Cleopatra, and there was always like the constant Cleopatra and her ladies. Like it always came to them, like they were the anchor of the story, and it almost felt like a sitcom in the way that it was like sitcoms keep going from like
groups,
the A and B and C plot, and like the A plot that it always came back to was them. And I always loved Mara's delivery of the scene where like Antony's like trying to ask for forgiveness basically, and she's not having it, and Charmaine, and I always forget the other lady's name that Summer played, and they're just like
Yeah, I liked that they had that like group of women. I thought they were like a nice addition of like how they like kind of kept going together, and I thought that they were like a good way to like see how she was like outside of politics kind of, and like how she talked about the different situations and everything.
It gave me big, I know Mara will get this Daenerys Targaryen with like Missandei vibes, like the, you know, queen and her ladies, like that she keep, or like on Reign.
Totally get that reference.
On like Reign with Mary Queen of Scots and her ladies, because like I like that the ladies aren't just like some random background characters, like, oh, and her attendants, like that they were named, like this played the Bechdel test, because there was plenty of times when they were just talking about politics. They weren't just talking about men. I love when she was like, is she like high, is she shrill voiced or low? And they say low, and then Mara's like, that's not so good. There was also just deliveries I thought were so funny, like when David came in and was like, a message from Caesar, and Mara was just like, what? Like it was just, I wish more actual, like when you go see Shakespeare would be more funny like that, with the like, and not everything has to be so dramatic.
Yeah, it does not have to be serious, because it's not like like that serious.
I don't know, like Cleopatra had such petty moments that it's also like, why wouldn't she just be a little bit like spoiled and stuff like that? Why would
I mean,
seriously.
My favorite line in the whole play is where she says, if you find him sad, say I am dancing. If in mirth, report that I am sudden sick. But I always just like, if you find him sad, say I am dancing. Like that's so like, what is it? Gaslight, girl boss, gatekeeper, whatever. Like Cleopatra, iconic. It's so fun. And Mar was so funny doing it. Like,
yeah.
I mean, I also think everyone wearing sheets dramatically really added to it.
I agree. I think that was a must.
I think the sheets really added a whole other layer. But yeah, I think it was really funny. Just overall, every time. Well, and that's like what Mara said. Like it had a balance of like, it was never like Hamlet is one of those plays like there's no goddamn consistency in the tone, and like the Henrys will start with like the Henrys almost always start with these very funny scenes with like Falstaff and like Prince Hal, or just like scenes like that, and then they take this turn and they're just overly dramatic for the rest of the play, whereas like, you know, and even Romeo and Juliet, which I love, is like it's cut and dry. Like the first half is very funny and then immediately it's very dramatic.
And then it all goes downhill.
And it's just, that's not how life works. And so I think Antony and Cleopatra is, I'd say what we've read so far is like the best blending in any, like, I think this is technically categorized as a tragedy. So I think it's the best blending tonally, because obviously like in the comedies, they're going to just be funny the whole time through, like The Tempest and Midsummer. But I think out of all the tragedies, this is the one that balances out the tonal shifts. Like the comedic relief comes in right when you need it to. It's not just like 4-page monologues like Hamlet is. That's my take here.
Yeah, no, I agree. And there was a moment when we were reading and I was just like crying. I was like, okay, what is happening here? Like we're just like I don't know, it took like it was such a nice flow that it just took me into it, and just like very immersive because of that.
And when it gets sad at the end, it feels really believable. Like you believe that these people are madly in love with each other. You believe that these women are willing to die for their queen. Like
I think that's also why, because I think that's also because of the happier moments that you get. It's like you get those like nice moments where like you can like really feel for them, and I think it makes it more like realistic, and like obviously it's not, but like it makes it more believable that like it could happen.
Also, just the idea of like she's in love with this guy who's always dating someone else, who's always like, oh, I'm gonna leave them for you. Like that is just a thing that happens in modern day. And I guess at this point, like her brothers that she married are dead. But you know, and also like she is a woman ruling alone in a time when that's not seen as okay. And this, you know, she's not gonna find a wealth of men who are gonna respect her for that. And so the idea that this is someone who respects her reign and everything enough, like of course she's going to want to hang out with him. Talk about themes.
Yeah.
I wrote some down, but I've been talking a lot. So Bridget, do you want to take it away?
Yeah, I was gonna say like love, and obviously like that. I feel like that's a theme in all of them. But ooh, my computer just froze there for a sec. Love, and then like I think along with that, the idea of power and how they use it with that, and then also going back to that conversation that was really funny with Mar and David, like the idea of messages being like a big central focus, and like how people communicate with each other, because I feel like communication is always a big thing, and especially in this one, it felt like that combined with like the idea of power, like how people talk about it and everything, I felt like that worked really well.
I had misogyny and fear of female power because like obviously that's why Caesar comes in, and I think one of the reasons Antony always chooses not to leave whomever his wife, because like it starts with his wife has died and he doesn't give a shit, and then he marries Octavia, and it's like he loves Cleopatra, but she is so confident and powerful that it does intimidate him to an extent, and if he marries these more submissive women, then like he doesn't need to fully embrace being with a powerful woman, and obviously like she's not gonna beg him to be with her because she's fucking Cleopatra, like she doesn't need him. I also had betrayal, obviously, because there's not just like, you know, they get betrayed out to Caesar, and the betrayal of like, you know, the Egyptian people are gonna let her fall to Caesar, but also like, you know, like she betrays him in the way that she's like, "Go tell him I died," when she didn't. And also the betrayal of like he says, "Oh, like I love only you. Now that my wife's dead, I'll be with you," and then he goes and marries somebody else. Like, what about you, Mara? Any themes you noticed?
Yeah, I mean, like just having like these images of royals are not like perfect, or there's not like a perfect hero either, you know, like one that will just do everything that is good or whatever. Like Cleopatra has a love for Antony, yes, but she will also like recur to these things of just like gaslighting him, like, oh yeah, like tell him I'm sad or tell him that I'm happy, like manipulating him. And also, yeah, Anthony being a coward and just not abandoning like his wife or marrying Octavia is just yeah, like he's not perfect either, and we made like hate Caesar the most at this moment, but it's just like none of them are like the full-fledged hero of like, yeah, everything is right and everything for the people and still sacrificing, you know.
I told Bridget this the other day, Mar. I felt so dumb. I learned the other day that Caesar was not their last name. That's what I thought it was. Did you know?
Yeah, I knew that.
Oh, we didn't. We thought it was like the family name, or something. I did not know it meant king. My mom told me, and I was like, "What?" And she's like, "What did you think?" I was like, "I thought like Julius was the first name, Caesar was the last." And like, so I was just like, "Yeah, this." And Bridget was like, "I just thought they had a really long family line." I was like, "Wow,"
because they're just all connected there.
I thought it was like there's so many Tudors in England. I thought it was a similar thing. It never occurred to me that it, because you don't say like, you say King Henry, you don't say Henry King. So like
yeah, in other languages it's different, but also it's like, I don't know, so many of them were also had the last name of Caesar that I felt like
it didn't occur to me. It did not occur to me in the slightest that that's.
Yeah, it was just when you ascended to power, you were granted.
Yep, I shows what I knew. Public school education.
Yeah, same here.
I also had written down ambiguity, and opposition, because like obviously the vague messages, as again like the gaslighting itself, an entire theme in the play. Because that's the thing is like when you like read Romeo and Juliet, it's like their love is so beautiful and pure and like what you aspire to, and they have like the innocence of youth. And then Antony and Cleopatra, arguably just as much in love, but toxic as hell. like not good. They are just jaded by
This is the type of romance that I could see Molly liking.
Oh yeah, no, for sure. Romeo and Juliet, too happy. I mean, they die in the end, but when they're together, too happy. This
sweet. Yeah.
You're like, this is realistic. This is where I'm at.
This is life. This is how life works, and we can respect a girl boss. Cleopatra was the original girl boss, as everybody knows.
Yeah.
What's some fun dialogue? I wrote down a few things. Obviously, my favorite is if you find him sad, say I am dancing.
Mm-hmm.
Make that my Tinder bio or something. I think
eternity was in our lips and in our eyes. But that was a good one.
I know that a woman is a dish for the gods. If the devil dress her not, give me my robe, put on my crown. I have immortal longings in me. Like, what a badass. There's beggary. Yeah. There's beggary in love that can be reckoned.
This thou shouldst have done and not have spoke on it. In me 'tis villainy, being done unknown. I should have found it out afterwards well done, but must condemn it now.
What are you gonna say, Mark?
Oh no, just like the whole interaction at the beginning when Anthony's like, "Oh, I need to leave" or whatever, and Cleopatra is like, yeah, sure, like making fun of him and like why he married Fulvia then and that he's a fool and stuff like that. It's just really enjoyed that whole interaction. And obviously the one with the messenger being like,
yeah, when God, the whole messenger thing is so funny to me. Let me find it.
And the one that's like, oh, she's 30 and
yeah, it's like, madam, she was a widow and a widow. I think she may be 30. It's so funny. And then she's like, is she as tall as me? Like, I like Charmaine's little bit where she says, good now, some excellent fortune. Let me be married to 3 kings in a forenoon and widow them all. Let me have a child to 50 to whom Herod of jewelry may do homage. Bind me to marry me with Octavia Caesar and companion me with my mistress. Because she says, like, oh, funny, but it's like, the idea that, like, oh, companion me with my mistress. Like, in the end, they die together.
Mm-hmm. I also liked, give me my robe, put on my crown. I have immortal longings in me. Now no more the juice of Egypt's grape shall moist this lip.
It's good. Like, when women cloy the appetites they feed, but she makes hungry where most she satisfies. They're basically like, she is just hot as hell. We're a fan. I gotta find the whole messenger thing because it's so funny. I should have marked the page.
She shall be buried by her Antony. No grave upon the earth shall clip in it a pair so famous.
That's very similar too to like the end of Romeo and Juliet. It's like never was there a tale of more woe than that of Juliet and her Romeo.
Yeah.
And you shall see in him the triple pillar of the world is transformed into a strumpet spool. Let Rome and Tiber melt and the wide arch of the range empire fall. Here is my space.
I think I found the messenger one. There's like Antonius that if thou say so, villain kills thy mistress, but well and free. And like the messenger's like, first madam, he's well. Like he's just like, madam, wait.
Shut up.
Hold on.
I always liked how Antony called her Egypt. Like that was almost pet name for her. So then where he says, I am dying, Egypt, dying. But also the idea that like Egypt died with her. Like she was the last like great ruler of Egypt.
Yeah, I really loved that.
And now boast thee death in thy possession lies, alas, unparalleled. Like the idea of like there was never like a greater woman than Cleopatra. And also the idea that like the last great ruler of ancient Egypt was her. So like with her, Egypt died with her. Like after her, it was never the same again. An icon. Egypt, thou knowest too well, my heart was thy rudder tied by thy strings, and thou shouldst tow me after. That's very much the idea of like, I would follow you anywhere kind of thing.
Yeah.
The breaking of so great a thing should make a greater crack. Like the idea of like, if you end, it should affect the world more. So emotional. Let me find one more.
I'll find one more too. In time we hate that which we often fear.
Oh, I love that one. The odds is gone, and there is nothing left remarkable beneath the visiting moon. The idea of like without her, like it's not as magnificent a place as it was. What a time.
Crazy. Yeah. So I thought there were a lot of good quotes in it. I feel like they're not as like obviously popular as a lot of the quotes in the other plays, but I felt like they're just as like Shakespeare's a lot of like good stuff, and he's smart, you know.
He's a smart guy. I had some before we get into talking about the movie we watched. I had a few more little facts about her I looked up. So not only did she marry two of her brothers, she was a product of incest. She might have helped murder three of her siblings.
Cool.
Cleopatra, I love this. Cleopatra and Antony formed their own underground drinking club called the Imitable Livers.
That's so fun.
I love that. And the 1963 movie Cleopatra with Taylor and Burton was one of the most expensive movies ever made.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Was that the 3-hour long one?
The like 4-hour one that we didn't watch? Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Which brings us to what we did watch. What the hell was even the name of what we watched?
It was like, hold on, let me find it. It was like The Wives of Antony and Cleopatra or something like that. It was on Amazon Prime for free with ads.
And yeah, I can't imagine having to pay for that.
The Real Antony and Cleopatra.
Yeah, the real, bold, calling it that, bold, because it was not.
Thing.
God, was it painful? It was a bunch of old white.
Okay, it was only an hour and 17 minutes. I felt like we sat there for at least 3 hours.
I was like, we might as well have watched the long ass one because, like, damn. No, it went on forever. It was so boring. It was the kind of like speculative historical fiction where they were just like presenting it as fact, and they kept being like. Yeah. They were like so sexist. They were like, Cleopatra was like very manipulative, and Cleopatra could do this, and Cleopatra could do that. And they were like,
just so boring.
They were like, our source material is this account by this one guy, and we have reason to believe that's very accurate. And I was like, what reason? Where's the reason? The reenactments were also just like that painful kind of documentary footage reenactments of just like people in like the cheapest costumes, like sitting on cheap sets. And I was like, looked like it got made in somebody's garage for $10, and I don't feel like I learned anything. I don't feel like
the only thing I learned about was Caesar, best dictator.
Oh yeah, dictator for life.
Dictator for life.
The fact that they gave up using period stock footage after a while, and it was just like modern day Egypt.
It was. They just had like cars in there and stuff, and they would have, they had these little clips of like things going on, and it would be like there was like this one where like this guy was like pulled out his sword and swinging it.
He was practicing. They were like he had to practice.
And there was like mist all around him.
God, it looked like they got his costume at Party City, like at a Halloween store.
It was so bad, and like I feel like it was just so boring. Like it felt so dragged out, even though it was only an hour and 17 minutes.
It hurt so much, and it was just like I hated everyone talking. All right, well, that was great. We forgot sonnets. Let me go grab my sonnet book, and we'll pick one at random.
Yeah.
Because our new, if I could get the book out, our new 2021 thing where we read a sonnet every. So we'll just open at random and see.
I'll read. Have we read sonnet 20? Wait, hold on. Do we have a list of which ones we've read?
No, we probably should have done that.
Yeah, maybe we'll go back and do that after. I feel like we haven't done this one, but like maybe we have, but like I'm gonna say we haven't, and then we can.
Okay, yeah, go ahead. Read it, and I'll find one to read.
You can let me know if you recognize it.
Okay, great.
Okay, sonnet 20. A woman's face with nature's own hand painted. A woman's face with nature's own hand painted, hast thou, the master mistress of my passion. A woman's gentle heart, but not acquainted with shifting change as is false women's fashion. An eye more bright than theirs, less false in rolling, gilding the object whereupon it gazeth. A man in hue, all hues in his controlling, which steals men's eyes and women's souls amazeth. And for a woman wert thou first created, till nature as she wrought thee fell a doting. And by addition of me of thee defeated, by adding one thing to my purpose, nothing. But since she pricked thee out for women's pleasure, mine be thy love, and thy love's use their treasure.
So I have sonnet 94. I looked up sonnets about power. I got sonnet 94.
Nice.
They that have power to hurt and will do none, that do not do the thing they most do show, who, moving others, are themselves a stone, unmoved, cold, and to temptation slow. They rightly do inherit heaven's graces, and husband nature's riches from expense. They are the lords and owners of their faces, others the stewards of their excellence. The summer's flower is to the summer sweet, bow to itself, it only live and die. But if that flower with base infection meet, the basset weed outbreaks his dignity. For sweetest things turn sourest by their deeds, lilies that fester smell far worse than weeds. So next month, we are reading the riveting.
Oh my God, can't wait. Best thing ever.
The 6-part one.
Oh my God.
Amazing.
Who's excited?
For our movie, we will be watching Disney's animated classic Mulan. If you're wondering how in the hell that counts, just wait.
It does. Don't worry.
It will. It will.
We'll work it in there.
You'll get it. We'll talk about that more on our socials. Our live reading will be on for this masterpiece. Will be on Friday the 13th of August, and our live stream discussion will be on the 27th. Make sure you follow us on socials at @bard_book on Twitter and Instagram. Make sure you follow Mar on all of her socials. And thanks so much for coming. Thanks Mar, for being a part of this.
Thank you for having me.
And we will see everybody next month.
Bye. Thanks for watching. We'll see you then. Bye.
Bye.